to the Trudeau live stream? Very nice.
No, it should go to you guys.
Yeah, it should go to us so we can introduce the show, and then it'll go to Trudeau.
He's probably going to be late.
We're on? Okay, hi, Candice Malcolm here, and please be joined with Keean Bexte from the Counter Signal. And we're here to deliver some bad news, folks. Trump did it. He has followed through with what he said he was going to do. It was not a bluff. He wasn't just, speaking off the cuff. He was saying what he was going to do, and it came today. So Trump took to True Social today and let it be known that 25% tariffs will be imposed starting on Tuesday. 25% on all goods other than oil. Oil will be down to 10%. And Trump says that if Canada retaliates, that the tariffs will increase. So we are waiting for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to speak. He was supposed to speak at 6:30. Supposed to be at 6 Eastern. Then it got bumped to 8:30. It's 9:07, and we're still waiting for our Prime Minister, who said he resigned, but he's still the Prime Minister for some reason. We are waiting for him to come out and tell the nation what is happening and what his response will be. Keean, thank you so much for joining us on this broadcast. What do you make of all of this so far?
Yeah, no problem. Trudeau being late is just like perfect for him right now. He's been completely AWOL, not just since he announced his resignation, but really since he took office. It's the perfect metaphor. Trudeau's leadership is the reason we're in this position. Trump does what he says he's gonna do. He always has. From his first term to his second term, he's always followed through. And a lot of people, a lot of CBC pundits right now are going to be telling us that Donald Trump is the enemy. Now, like, look, I like Donald Trump. Do I like what he's doing to Canada right now? Absolutely not. But the reason he's doing this is because he's putting America first and he sees Canada as weak. He sees Justin Trudeau's leadership, or should I say, lack thereof, over this past week while the world was watching, while our American neighbors were gearing up for serious trade talks. What was Trudeau doing? Absolutely nothing. His itinerary was literally blank for 2 of the last 3 days. Not one meeting, not one strategy session to counter this looming disaster. It's been like he's been on vacation while the economy was on the brink. Trump's decision to impose these tariffs, it's not just out of thin air. It's a direct result of Trudeau's failure to manage to engage seriously with this new administration. Do you remember when Trudeau went to Mar-a-Lago? Instead of coming back with concrete plans or even a hint of what was actually discussed, we got radio silence as Canadians, as the stakeholders of that meeting. We got nothing. Trudeau has been more focused on looking good for photo ops than actually doing the hard work of diplomacy, and we are the ones that are about to pay the price. What about the drug crisis? Trump's been talking about fentanyl constantly, about drugs pouring over our borders into their borders. Now, granted, it's been going both ways, but what has Trudeau's response been? Crickets. His strategy has been hoping that the problem will go away if he ignores it long enough. But the news flash is it's not going to work like that with Donald Trump.
Well, it's interesting, Keean, because when Trudeau went down to Mar-a-Lago, that was when the 51st state meme started coming out. That's when Trump started talking about it. And Trump said over and over that he asked Justin Trudeau what would happen if we put on 25% tariffs. According to Trump, Trudeau said it would destroy our country. It would end Canada. That doesn't really seem like a very good negotiating strategy. Like if you're really down there and you think this guy is serious and you think that he wants to, send a message, he thinks that the drugs are a major problem, the illegal immigration is a major problem. He is seriously concerned about these things. And what does our prime minister do? He goes straight up and says our greatest weakness. Like if you impose these tariffs, we won't exist as a country anymore. Like no wonder Trump is going to pick up on that and push that in because Trudeau told him that. Like, I don't understand why Trudeau would have said that in the first place. I think the media is not making nearly a big enough deal out of the fact that Trudeau said that because I think he was really actually setting Donald Trump up. And if you look at, Melanie Joly, the foreign minister, was down in Washington, D.C., Keean. And what was she doing? She was meeting with Democrats. She was meeting with liberal Democrats and posting
Yeah.
smiley selfies and pictures
Yeah.
of herself on X with these Democrats. It's like, hello, do you understand anything about partisan politics? Like, you going down and meeting with Democrats doesn't help at all. That's not diplomacy. That's not at all
Yeah.
diplomacy. What Danielle Smith was doing was diplomacy, trying to cut a deal. Folks, we've got one eye on the podium here. Justin Trudeau is supposed to address the country. He was supposed to have come out a couple of hours ago. We don't know what he's going to say, but one thing is clear, Keean, that Donald Trump has said that any retaliatory measure will be met with harder and stronger tariffs. So from my perspective, I'm terrified. Like 25% coming in on Tuesday will be devastating. Our economy is already incredibly weak, right?
Yeah.
After 10 years of Justin Trudeau printing money like, there's no tomorrow, inflating the economy, like the economy is on the rails, falling off the rails.
Yeah.
And the idea that, the strongest leader in the world, the strongest country in the world is threatening tariffs and threatening to possibly double them again, or who knows. I don't think retaliatory tariffs are the way to go, but that seems to be where we're headed. It seems to be sort of the unanimous position
Yeah.
of Canadian politics. Now, I don't want to get too deep into reading the responses. We will go through them. We'll react. Trudeau's on. Okay, let's go to Trudeau then.
25% tariffs on Canadian exports to the United States and 10% on Canadian energy. A decision that, should they elect to proceed with, should take effect on Tuesday, February 4th. Cette décision met en péril une relation économique historique. Une relation qui a été la source de tellement de richesses, de prospérité et de possibilités des deux côtés de la frontière. Tonight, first, I want to speak directly to Americans, our closest friends and neighbors. This is a choice that, yes, will harm Canadians, but beyond that, it will have real consequences for you, the American people. As I have consistently said, tariffs against Canada will put your jobs at risk, potentially shutting down American auto assembly plants and other manufacturing facilities. They will raise costs for you, including food at the grocery stores and gas at the pump. They will impede your access to an affordable supply of vital goods crucial for U.S. security, such as nickel, potash, uranium, steel, and aluminum. They will violate the free trade agreement that the President and I, along with our Mexican partner, negotiated and signed a few years ago. But it doesn't have to be this way. As President John F. Kennedy said many years ago, geography has made us neighbors, history has made us friends, economics has made us partners, and necessity has made us allies. That rang true for many decades prior to President Kennedy's time in office, and in the decades since. From the beaches of Normandy to the mountains of the Korean Peninsula, from the fields of Flanders to the streets of Kandahar, we have fought and died alongside you. During your darkest hours, during the Iranian hostage crisis, those 444 days we worked around the clock from our embassy to get your innocent compatriots home. During the summer of 2005, when Hurricane Katrina ravaged your great city of New Orleans, or mere weeks ago, when we sent water bombers to tackle the wildfires in California. During the day the world stood still, September 11th, 2001, when we provided refuge to stranded passengers and planes, we were always there, standing with you, grieving with you, the American people. Together, we've built the most successful economic, military, and security partnership the world has ever seen. A relationship that has been the envy of the world. Yes, we've had our differences in the past, but we've always found a way to get past them. As I've said before, if President Trump wants to usher in a new golden age for the United States, the better path is to partner with Canada, not to punish us. Canada has critical minerals, reliable and affordable energy, stable democratic institutions, shared values, and the natural resources you need. Canada has the ingredients necessary to build a booming and secure partnership for the North American economy, and we stand at the ready to work together. Let's take a moment to talk about our shared border. Our border is already safe and secure, but there's always more work to do. Less than 1% of fentanyl, less than 1% of illegal crossings into the United States come from Canada. But hearing concerns from both Canadians and Americans, including the American president himself, we're taking action. We launched a $1.3 billion border plan that is already showing results, because we too are devastated by the scourge that is fentanyl, a drug that has torn apart communities and caused so much pain and torment for countless families across Canada, just like in the United States. A drug that we too want to see wiped from the face of this earth. A drug whose traffickers must be punished. As neighbors, we must work collaboratively to fix this. Unfortunately, the actions taken today by the White House split us apart instead of bringing us together. Tonight, I am announcing Canada will be responding to the U.S. trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods. This will include immediate tariffs on $30 billion worth of goods as of Tuesday, followed by further tariffs on $125 billion worth of American products in 21 days' time to allow Canadian companies and supply chains to seek to find alternatives. Ce soir, j'annonce la réplique du Canada. Des tarifs douaniers de 25% sur 155 milliards de dollars de marchandises américaines. Dès mardi, 30 milliards de dollars de produits américains vont être touchés par ces tarifs et dans 21 jours, pour donner le temps aux compagnies canadiennes de trouver des options alternatives, ce sera le cas pour 125 milliards de dollars de marchandises de plus. Like the American tariffs, our response will also be far-reaching and include everyday items such as American beer, wine, and bourbon, fruits and fruit juices, including orange juice, along with vegetables, perfume, clothing, and shoes. It'll include major consumer products like household appliances, furniture, and sports equipment, and materials like lumber and plastics, along with much, much more. And as part of our response, we are considering, with the provinces and territories, several non-tariff measures, including some relating to critical minerals, energy, procurement, and other partnerships. We will stand strong for Canada. We will stand strong to ensure our countries continue to be the best neighbors in the world. With all that said, I also want to speak directly to Canadians in this moment. I'm sure many of you are anxious, but I want you to know we are all in this together. The Canadian government, Canadian businesses, Canadian organized labor, Canadian civil society, Canada's premiers, and tens of millions of Canadians from coast to coast to coast are aligned and united. This is Team Canada at its best. Plus tôt aujourd'hui, j'ai parlé avec les premiers ministres de toutes nos provinces et territoires On est unis et solidaires. Ils ont tous appuyé notre approche. On est aussi alignés pour faire tomber les obstacles qui freinent le commerce entre nos provinces et territoires et rendre ça plus facile pour les consommateurs de choisir les produits de chez nous. Il y a quelques minutes, je me suis entretenu avec Mme Sheinbaum, la présidente
That
du
was
Mexique.
Justin Trudeau responding in
partenaire
kind with
nord-américain, qui a lui
25%
aussi
tariffs. Trudeau says that Canada will impose tariffs 25% on $155 billion worth of US goods. So here we are, Keean. We have now officially entered a trade war. We're not going to try to de-escalate. We're not going to try to strike a deal with Trump. It seems that Trudeau is, again, I have to stop and just say, you know, this guy resigned. You know, I woke up on January 6th with a notification, and then I saw Justin Trudeau with my own eyes telling us that he was done, that he was resigning, that he wasn't going to be our prime minister anymore. And yet we still have to listen to him. We still have to hear him go out there with his drama, big boy voice, speaking sternly to the Americans, talking down to them. Like, you know, he said during his message, the whole thing, that he's going to address at first the message to the Americans. And then he gives us all the sap, quoting John F. Kennedy, trying to like play up a nostalgic, love for one another. I'm sorry, that's just not going to cut it. You know, it's 2025. Trump is issuing, he's ushering his country into the golden age, and he sees Canada as an impediment, and he is smacking Trudeau around. Trudeau doesn't understand that. He is about a joke. Like, I know that it's supposed to elicit like patriotism and pride and like, yeah, we're on the same side. When I hear Justin Trudeau speak, I just feel like so ashamed that he is the one that is representing us, that he is the one speaking for us. I don't want him to be our prime minister anymore. He needs to resign. We need an election. Like, I know it's not going to happen right now because we're in the midst of this, and this is going to, Trudeau's going to use this to continue to promote the Liberals. Is all like so much of the reaction that we're seeing from politicians right now is all about their own political careers and pushing for their own elections and their own, Mark Carney saying this, Pierre Poilievre saying this, and, deep down, it's all just about them trying to win an election. It's not actually what's best for Canada. It's such a shame that we are here at this point. Trudeau barely even mentions the major issue that Trump has talked about, which is immigration and fentanyl drugs. Yes, he mentioned it in passing, but obviously he hasn't done enough, Keean, to address those issues. If he had, we wouldn't be in this position. Here we are, February 1st. Trump said he was going to impose these tariffs, and here they are. And I think it's just going to be absolutely devastating for our economy. Our economy is already incredibly weak. People are suffering so much from this cost of living crisis that has come from Justin Trudeau's taxes and his inflationary policies. And now we're going to have another 25% each way. Like, this is just going to be absolutely deadly for our economy. And the idea that Canada can engage in a trade war with the United States, I'm sorry, our economy is just absolutely minuscule compared to theirs. It is, we're 1/10 the size of the population, much less than that as a percentage of their economy versus ours. Like, we don't stand a chance. This isn't going to go well for us. I don't understand. Keean, what do you think?
I'm trying to not lose my marbles after having to listen to yet another impassioned, brainless speech from our prime minister. After hearing that, it becomes more and more clear that Justin Trudeau and the Liberals are using this as a sort of October surprise and are intentionally tanking the economy to profit politically off of the backs of Canadians who are now going to have to pay in untold levels of economic pain, so that he can stand there with Melanie Joly and Dominic LeBlanc, who looks like an absolute clown, by the way. They look like they're in shell shock, that they don't understand why this is happening. And I know exactly why it's happening. Folks, this is what happens when you elect a leader who is more interested in virtue signaling than actual governance. Trudeau's blank itineraries this week are a metaphor for his entire term. Empty, devoid of substance, and completely out of touch with the needs of Canadians and Americans. He said that Canada has always been there for America, talking about the streets of Kandahar and the peaks of the Korean Peninsula, going on and on about how Canadians have been there for Americans. And it's true, they have been. But the prime minister that does not get to claim any of that is Justin Trudeau. He has been nowhere to be seen when it comes to building the relationship between Canada and the United States. When he's not taking partisan potshots, as you mentioned, talking about how Americans are actually stupid because they didn't elect a woman and shatter the glass ceiling, and that's where progress really would have been seen. And gosh, if only Americans were as smart as us Canadians who have gender balanced cabinets and oh, it's 2015 and blah, blah, blah. And then he takes credit for sending water bombers down to the United States. That wasn't Justin Trudeau. That was the government of Quebec. That was Danielle Smith who actually sent Albertan firefighters down to Los Angeles to help save Americans. But Justin Trudeau is taking credit for that. So all of Canadians, to all the Canadians that are going to be feeling the pinch because of these tariffs, the CBC is going to be blaming Donald Trump. Every left-wing pundit is going to say that we are the victims here. And, you know, to be fair, the everyday Canadian, they are the victim. But we're only a victim because we've allowed ourselves to be victimized by political incompetence like Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau's negligence has put our economy in jeopardy, and it's high time that we demand better leadership than this. This is embarrassing that we sit here for 2 hours waiting for this moron to come out on stage and speak these platitudes. He said nothing outside of the fact that he's going to destroy the Canadian economy on principle because he doesn't like Donald Trump and he's unwilling to do what needs to be done to protect our borders, to protect Americans from fentanyl that's coming through Mexico to Canada and into the United States, and also to protect Canadians. He didn't really care when Roxham Road was spilling hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants from the United States to Canada. He doesn't care about borders at all. He said it wasn't even an issue in the speech that he just gave. And then he said, oh, but we did invest $1 billion and now we're seeing progress, just directly contradicting himself. It's tough to put into words how brain dead this prime minister is. He really is in it for the polling numbers. And I think that he is using this situation to benefit his party and his own legacy. And it's embarrassing and it needs to stop.
Well, I completely agree with so much of what you said there, Keean. I couldn't help when he came out there and he started giving his speech. Like to me, he's always a drama teacher, and he's always got the flair, and it's always fake and phony. All I could think is this guy's relaunching his political career. Like he's not done yet.
Yeah.
He's gonna put his hat in and run for leader of the Liberal Party. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he just changed his mind and said, you know, times are too important, and figure out a way to stick around, because that's obviously, you know, he's all about himself, loves the sound of his own voice, loves to go out there and be in front of the camera and give his best blue steel there. So folks, for anyone just joining us, I'm Candice Malcolm, joined by Keean Bexte of the Counter Signal. So earlier today, we had major breaking news. Donald Trump announced that there were 25% tariffs on Canadian and Mexican imports coming on Tuesday. The only slight difference from the 25% across the board tariffs, which he had promised, was that we learned that oil will be tariffed at only 10%. So maybe you can say thank you to Danielle Smith for that one, for her efforts. I assume that her efforts are what led to that carve out of 10%. Not great still, but at least it's not the full 25%. Trump said that if Canada retaliates, the tariffs will increase. Well, lo and behold, our prime minister, who just won't go away, who resigned, but somehow he's still prime minister, came out and spoke to the nation and said that Canada will in fact respond with retaliatory tariffs. So we haven't yet heard Trump back. You know, Trudeau just spoke moments ago, declaring that Canada will impose a 25% tariff on our American neighbors in response to Trump's 25%. He said that they will apply to $155 billion worth of goods, and that 30 billion of those will go into effect on Tuesday. So on Tuesday, Canada's economy will go into a major tailspin. It's going to be scary, folks. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has said that this will be devastating for the auto industry, the North American auto industry, and basically this is uncharted territory. So we have some of the statements here. So, well, first let's go through what Donald J. Trump said. This is what he posted onto his True Social. I think we have the graphic. He says, "Today I've implemented a 25% tariff on imports from Mexico and Canada, 10% on Canadian energy, and a 10% additional tariff on China. This was done through an international emergency economic Powers Act because of the major threat of illegal aliens and deadly drugs killing our citizens, including fentanyl. We need to protect Americans, and it is my duty as president to ensure the safety of all. I made a promise on my campaign to stop the flood of illegal aliens and drugs from pouring across our borders, and Americans overwhelmingly voted in favor of it. Just a side note here, Keean, when I listen to the legacy media, when I turn on CBC or when I when I read the newspaper, I barely hear anything about these issues. Like when the mainstream media look at Trump, they just think, this is all about his imperial desire to rule over North America. This is manifest destiny. He wants Canada to be the 51st state. Like tying it all back to Trump the man and Trump the, MAGA the movement. And they don't talk about the thing that Trump has said that he cares the most about, which is stopping illegal aliens from crossing the border, stopping that flow, and of course, deadly fentanyl. Look, all you have to do is look at Sam Cooper. Sam Cooper is one of the best, if not the best, investigative journalists in the country, and he has uncovered an unbelievable web of basically like Chinese mafia in Canada, mostly in British Columbia, tied into all kinds of money laundering. Canada is absolutely full of money laundering, and to the point where our institutions, like the fact that we let other countries get away with this kind of stuff in our country, and yes, there are fentanyl labs, and yes, they're being distributed. Like British Columbia has become the world headquarter in some ways of fentanyl. It's being distributed all over the world from Canada, and we don't have a handle on it. We can't stop it, and it's barely discussed. Trudeau hardly mentioned it. We do have a problem with illegal immigration. We do have a problem with fentanyl. We do have a problem with nefarious and adversarial regimes being able to operate in our country without any consequence. I mean, there was a foreign interference election commission studied it for months and months and months. For 2 years, we heard about how there were traitors in our parliament and how they were going to come out with something strong, and then comes out with a whimper and nothing to see here, and whoops, no interference, just some naughty or just some unwitting behavior, and that's it. And we move on. Like we're not actually addressing the major problems in our country. Our country is falling apart. This isn't Donald Trump that is destroying our country. Our country has been destroyed by Justin Trudeau. And I just, seeing him come out and give that speech, like he just needs to go away. He needs to go away. He broke the country. He's not going to be the one to fix it. We need to move on. Keean, what do you think?
It stems from a complete lack of focus and discipline from our federal government. Just today, the Liberals announced 41 million, let me look at 41 million, I think it was, dollars towards an initiative supporting advancing equality for the quote 2S LGBTQI community. With that money, they could have leased dozens of Black Hawk helicopters for a decade and patrolled the border, crack down on drugs, crack down on human trafficking. But no, this is what they thought. This was a press release from the Liberals today. I couldn't believe what I was saying. We did a story on it because I was just in shock that they were just so out of touch with what Canadians need right now. We don't need to advance to LGBTQI equality right now when our economy is about to unravel at the seams completely and totally. It's not just Trudeau, it's the entire Liberal apparatus of government that is responsible for this disaster. I have to say it, as much as I hate Trudeau and think that he is, very responsible for the situation we're in. It is the entire Liberal bureaucracy that is out of touch, not in focus, and not focused on dealing with the issues that Canadians really and North Americans at large need support and answers for. Justin Trudeau, I tweeted this, it went kind of pretty widespread today, that Justin Trudeau and Carney, all of the Liberals, they want you to think that this is happening because Donald Trump is mean, but it's actually happening because the US and all of our other allies have been very clear about this, that they've lost confidence in us as a country. They don't see us as a peer anymore. They see us like Mexico. They see us like China. We're failing at the basics, and you can't be partners with a country that is a danger to itself. Justin Trudeau said that we're this bastion of democracy and we're super trustworthy on that front. But you said it perfectly. You know, there's traitors in our parliament, and we're not strong enough to drag them out by their toes and string them up. It's really unfortunate that we are willing to sacrifice what it means to be Canadian at the altar of Justin Trudeau and the Liberals.
Well, I think so many Canadians are done with it. And you know, just looking at the polls, I mean, Trudeau is finished and nobody wants him out there negotiating for us. He's doing a terrible job. He shouldn't even be there. And, you know, it's interesting to see the other candidates sort of jockeying position. Mark Carney put out his own video right around the same time as Justin Trudeau was speaking. And again, it's just electioneering. Like the Liberals would so much rather run an election on dealing with Trump and who's going to be like the stronger anti-Trump voice, because that is harder for Pierre Poilievre to manage, rather than it be a referendum on the last 9 years, which have been an absolute disaster. Well, folks, thank you so much for joining us. We threw this live stream together quite quickly. You know, it's Saturday night, 9:30 my time. I put my kids to bed and I was about to like crawl into bed and go to sleep. And then I realized that all of this was happening. I turned on my computer like, oh my goodness, okay, I need to get on a live stream. So I appreciate everyone watching us. Keean, always a pleasure for you to join the channel and the network. If you're watching, please give this video a like. It really helps us, helps people discover the video, helps make sure as many people as possible can see our work at True North. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel as well. It really helps us out. Okay, so let's go back to some of the responses. So we had Doug Ford just come out like really blunt. You know, he was out on CNN. He's out there trying to make the case. I think he's probably a better person to make the case to Americans as to maybe why this isn't the best idea. I would much rather Doug Ford be out there than Justin Trudeau. And I say that as someone who has never voted for Doug Ford, and I'm not a big fan, but on this front, I think he's a better communicator, and I'd rather him be out there negotiating because he kind of speaks the same language as Trump and as many Americans. But he posted quite a somber message on X. He said, "I'm extremely disappointed that Donald Trump has chosen to walk away from a trading relationship that for decades has made life better for millions of workers on both sides of the border." He goes on, he says, "The coming days and weeks will be incredibly difficult. Trump's tariffs will devastate our economy. They'll put 450,000 jobs at risk across the province." This is Ontario. "Every sector and region will feel the impact." He says, "None of us want to be here, but Canada and Ontario have faced down this kind of challenge before. Each time we've emerged stronger, more united, more determined than ever." So he's also, you know, he's running an election too. Recall, folks, that he's called an election in Ontario. So he's decided that he's going to pull the plug early on his government and go for another 4 years. And he's going to win a huge majority because there isn't really an opposition to him. Okay, let's go to Pierre Poilievre. Pierre Poilievre also posted quite a lengthy response here. He says, I'm going to get your opinion after this, Keean, because I don't know about this response from Pierre Poilievre. I think he's playing it a little too safe, but here we go. I'll give it a read. He says, "We must put Canada first. That is why common sense conservatives condemn President Trump's massive, unjust, and unjustified tariffs on Canada's already weak economy. Canada is the United States' closest neighbor, greatest ally, and best friend. We shared the world's longest undefended border and fought alongside Americans in 2 wars, Korea and Afghanistan, where 158 of our brave men and women died helping the United States avenge 9/11. There is no justification whatsoever for this treatment. The Liberals must put aside their partisan interests and recall Parliament now to pass the Canada First plan that will, 1, retaliate with a dollar-for-dollar tariff carefully aimed at maximizing impact on American companies while minimizing impact on Canadian consumers." Good luck with that. 2, put all the tariff revenues into help for affected workers and businesses. Government should not keep a dime of the new revenue. 3, pass a massive emergency bring it home tax cut to bolster the economy, stop inflation, and save and create jobs. 4, immediately scrap the Liberal anti-resource law Bill C-69, greenlight LNG plants, pipelines, mines, factories, and port expansions. I'm definitely for that one. Number 5, bring in truly free trade within Canada by knocking down interprovincial barriers. That's a no-brainer. Number 6, rebuild our military and take back control of our borders to regain the confidence of our partners, assert our sovereignty, protect our people, and put Canada first. We will protect our economy, defend our sovereignty, bring home production and paychecks, and never back down. We'll put Canada first now and always. So to me, that's a little bit like all the internal stuff is like, yeah, definitely. Like why does Canada have so many trade barriers interprovincially? That's such nonsense. Yes, we need to have a better military. Yes, we need to build more pipelines. But Pierre's basically calling for the same thing that Trudeau just said, which is dollar for dollar retaliatory tariffs there. What do you think, Keean?
The difficulty here for Pierre is that he's listening, I think, a lot to the mainstream media, and he's hearing them justify Trudeau's response and a Team Canada response. And the mainstream media is always happy to tax people more, and that is what a tariff is. It's a tax. I appreciate that Pierre said that he doesn't want the Canadian government to keep a dime of it. That's going to be important, that we watch and audit Justin Trudeau to make sure that he's not profiteering off this financially as well to cover up his deficit. I wish that Pierre was a little bit more speaking. I think Trump responds to strength, and he responds to people who think like him. You mentioned that about Doug Ford, and I think Pierre could learn a little bit about this. This is not the time to agree that Justin Trudeau is on the right path here. I think that we've analyzed why he's not. These tariffs are going to hurt Canadians. They're taxes on Canadians. That's the problem here. And I don't think that that's the way to go. I think that there's anything but consensus on that outside of the Ottawa bubble. When Canadians go to get the orange juice that they trust and drink every day and give to their kids, and they can no longer afford it, maybe, and here's the other thing, maybe if our economy was in a good position right now, we could stomach some tariffs, but we can't. The economy was already a dumpster fire before Justin Trudeau took this action, and agreeing with him that this is the right course of action is just going to hurt Canadians more, which is deeply, deeply unfortunate. Poilievre started off saying, yeah, we've got to put Canada first. Great. That's a sentiment I can get behind, especially when you consider the context. Trump's throwing these massive tariffs at us, and what does Poilievre think that we should do? Well, a Canada First plan. He's been talking about that for a long time. I like it. He's condemning these tariffs. Fine. But because Canada is America's closest neighbor, their greatest ally, we can't forget that we are responsible for the situation that we have put ourselves in. We have allowed the border to become this no man's land where drugs, cartel members, and thugs pour over without any care of or any concern that the RCMP or FBI are going to attack them. I think it's what Pierre should say is that this is a mutual problem, and he should lay out the solution for it for when he takes power and works with Donald Trump to solve the solution. I mean, Pierre doesn't need to go through this and explain why Justin Trudeau is rightfully tariffing Canadians. He needs to be explaining to Donald Trump why this is going to change when he takes power. Because I think that these tariffs, if Justin Trudeau wants to keep escalating, as Donald Trump has said to not do, because the tariffs will increase, it's a trade war, and the only way this changes is with a change in leadership at the very top of our government. Otherwise, I think we're in for a hell of a ride for the next few months.
I couldn't agree more. Okay, so we have BC Premier David. Just when you think that Justin Trudeau is the biggest joke in the country, here you have a BC Premier stepping up and say, "I'm going to outdo you, Justin Trudeau. You're going to go one worse." So, BC Premier David Eby declares that his first step in retaliating against the Americans is to tariff British Columbia liquor stores, the government liquor stores out west, and telling them to stop buying liquor from red states. So you can still get your California wine, you can still get your whatever they produce in New York, your IPAs, but you can't get your Jack Daniels or your whiskey from Kentucky. You can't you can't get red state alcohol. So we're now even zeroing in even harder on Donald Trump, and supposedly the Republicans have voted him in. What a silly, silly thing to do. I'll read Danielle Smith's response as well. She wrote that she says, I'm disappointed with US President Donald Trump's decision to place tariffs on Canadian goods. This decision will harm Canadians and Americans alike and strain the important relationship and alliance between our two nations. Alberta will do everything in its power to convince the US President and Congress, as well as the American people, to reverse this mutually destructive policy. We note that reduced 10% tariff for Canadian energy, which is partially a recognition of the advocacy undertaken by our government and industry to the U.S. administration, pointing out the substantial wealth created in the U.S. by American companies, tens of thousands of American workers that upgrade and refine approximately $100 billion of Canadian crude into $300 billion of product sold over the world to the same companies. So she goes on and on to talk about the benefits of the relationship and what she thinks Canada should be doing, including securing our borders against illegal immigration and drugs, moving in both directions, achieving our nation's 2% of GDP NATO commitment by 2027. She sort of reluctantly says that she will agree with the federal Canadian government. She says Alberta will work collaboratively with our federal government and fellow provinces on a proportionate response to be imposed to the imposed U.S. tariffs through a strategic use of Canadian import tariffs on U.S. goods. So she's sort of not fully coming around to this idea. Remember, it was a few weeks ago that she refused to sign that joint statement by the
Yeah.
premiers and Trudeau because she didn't want to jump ahead and say, yes, we're going to do retaliatory tariffs. Here she's saying that she will work collaboratively with them with the strategic use of it. So she's sort of reluctantly saying we're going to do it. But I think that the message from Danielle there was much more on the money. Like,
Yep.
we have to continue negotiating. We're going to continue to make the case, right? Not getting up on your high horse and like explaining to the Americans how wrong they are, but saying, we're going to continue to use diplomacy and make inroads, and hopefully we can get past this. Like, nobody wants an economic war here. And yeah,
Trudeau does. He wants it.
Yeah,
He's
maybe.
thriving off of this.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, seeing him get up there and give his speech, I really do think that he's like already planning his comeback, his political comeback.
Yeah. And you mentioned Danielle Smith. I feel like she's the only adult in the room. She is Team Canada. She is the person that's put us in the only good thing that has come from this. Rewind a week, 2 weeks. It was a 25% tariff on Canada. Full stop, all goods. We were wringing our hands, horrified at what that would do to the automotive industry, every industry out east, fishing, and the energy industry. And then that's when Danielle stands up and says, okay, I'm going to go down south. I'm going to go speak with the president. And now here we are, 10%. That's 15%. Now, 10% is going to be disastrous for Western Canadian Select Oil. It's not going to be good. You can see it in our dollar already. People are preparing to not be buying that oil. It's bad for our Forex. It's going to be bad for the industries, both upstream and downstream in the oil and gas industry. But at the end of the day, that 15% is going to save jobs. There are an amount of jobs that now will not be lost thanks to the diplomacy that Danielle Smith has done. Diplomacy is a weird word to use with a premier of a province in Canada. It's almost unheard of in our system of government for a premier to be having diplomatic relationship with a foreign government, let alone the president of the United States. But she saw the gap. She saw the bubble, the leadership vacuum, and she decided to take action. So I think credit where credit is due for her. Naheed Nenshi, the leader of the Alberta NDP, not to get too into Alberta specific politics here, he was angry at Danielle Smith. He said that this was her fault. Mocha, if you could bring up his Twitter and show people what Naheed Nenshi was saying today. She just tweeted it a few hours ago, saying that this is her responsibility, that because she went down south to speak with Donald Trump, these tariffs are now happening. It's completely out of touch with any political sensibilities, any understanding of the diplomacy that Danielle was doing, Premier Smith was doing when she was down there. I was down there with her. I interviewed her. I spoke with her and she sounded serious, dead serious. She was not happy to be there, but she knew that she had to be there. And that's, that's leadership at the end of the day.
Absolutely. I mean, she's the only one that's doing it. I sort of get strategically why Pierre Poilievre doesn't get on a plane and go down to the inauguration and go down to Mar-a-Lago. Like that would be kind of, I guess, political suicide to like many of like the red Tories who live in Ontario. I don't know. I would like to see Pierre engaging because I think that he
Yeah,
needs to show Canadians and show Trump, look, this Trudeau government is on the way out. They are incredibly unpopular and they have all but destroyed Canada. Our economy is incredibly weak and they have weakened it. They have destroyed it with their carbon taxes, with their anti-energy policies, their inflationary spending, with their open border immigration. That's all going to end as soon as a conservative government comes in. So why don't you wait? Give us a few months. We're going to have an election. We're going to get it
yeah,
done. Deal with me. I'm going to
yeah,
be the prime minister. Like that's what Pierre Poilievre needs to be doing. He needs to be
yeah,
speaking to Trump, speaking his language, making the case. And when I see Pierre come out with this kind of thing, I think he's just being a little too cautious. He's being a little bit too
yeah,
concerned about the people in Toronto who read the Globe and Mail,
yeah,
who are swing voters. Look, at the end of the day, I think Pierre Poilievre is going to win the next election. Whether he wins a massive, sweeping, historic majority, or whether he gets like a small, like squeaks through, sort of like the way that. I mean, I hope he doesn't get a minority government, but I think that at a certain point, like Pierre just needs to stop worrying about what the Laurentian elites in
mhm,
Toronto think, and the people who read the Globe Mail and the people who write for the Globe Mail, and just like go for what's best for the country. Like Canada's in
yeah,
serious trouble. And like I don't say this with glee. I like this isn't something that like brings me joy to say, but like when I look at Canada and what has happened over the past 10 years, and specifically what's happened here in the last 2 years, like the country is not in a good shape economically, culturally, socially. Like there's so much division, there's so much hate, there's so much, so many people that are just totally demoralized. And like,
mhm,
when we do surveys and you see that 50% of young men want to move to the United States, many do, many go up and go. And it's not because they hate Canada. I'm sure a lot of those guys have Maple Leafs tattooed, on their
yeah,
chest. But it's like at the end of the day, you go where there are opportunities and you need to be able to support your family, feed your family. And you look around, I mean, I'm sorry, like it costs $1 million to buy a crappy house in Toronto. Like there's nowhere
yeah,
to live in the city, and it's overrun. I mean, like the rent prices are insane. We've done stories at True North about basements in like suburbs where there's like 20 guys living in one basement, and they're each renting a bed for like $200 a month. Like it's just absolutely out of control, unbelievable. It's not even touching the crime, the drugs, the illegal immigration, the terrorists, the really, really terrible people that should never be operating in our country. The fact that there are all kinds of agents and like officials from adversarial countries like China that are just like
yeah,
operating in Canada completely without even notice. Like it's not even an issue that we talk about, but it's happening. There's just so many problems in Canada. And, I just don't think that now is the time to just say, okay, let's just get along and have this united Team Canada approach. It's like, no, I want to see the Conservatives break out and take an approach much more like what Danielle Smith's doing. She's not coming across as extreme in any way, by the way. She's
yeah.
completely on track. She's completely rational. Every time she speaks, it makes sense. I think Danielle Smith is really having a moment. I think I see a lot of people in the chat like they're like, let's like she should be prime minister. Let's like Danielle Smith. She really is showing she's thriving in this circumstance, and it's nice to see.
It's definitely not time for politics as usual. Premier Smith has read the room. And she knows that. She understands that. I hope that Pierre does as well. And my guess is that the calculus that's going through his head is that he sees that Donald Trump is going to be unpopular with Canadians and even his base because the mainstream media and Justin Trudeau are going to be effective at dodging the blame. Trudeau will be effective at dodging the blame personally, and the mainstream media will help him do that. they've always hated Donald Trump. They've always loved Trudeau. We know how this story goes. We've seen this movie before. And Pierre is weighing his head. Well, do I go down and talk with Donald Trump? And do I take some of the blame for this potentially politically, personally for him if it doesn't get solved? And the answer is yeah, maybe. But the problem is that we have allowed the mainstream media to define the narrative here already. I mean, not you and I. We're obviously trying to share the news and the stories that the mainstream media tries to keep hidden and the angles that they want to bury under the rug. But Canada has allowed the mainstream media to shape opinion on this before it happened. They had a month of lead up time. They knew Trump was coming into office. They knew these tariffs were coming. They knew Justin Trudeau was weak, and they set this up hook, line, and sinker for Justin Trudeau to run away with. And Pierre, unfortunately, I think, has been a little bit caught off guard with this preparation that they've all put together and executed pretty flawlessly to make themselves look like the heroes. That's why I'm glad that we have platforms like this, like YouTube and X, and our websites, the Counter Signal and True North, so that people can actually get the news that they need an answer to. I'm getting a, but I'll try to swipe away from that. People need to hear the story that the mainstream media wants to keep covered, which is why I'm glad that we have these platforms. And as you mentioned earlier, likes and subscriptions help a long way to help the algorithm go and share this news with moderate Canadians who might be duped by people like Justin Trudeau and Rosemary Barton into thinking that this really is Trump's fault when it was brought on by the Canadian administration.
Absolutely. I mean, Justin Trudeau is to blame. He's the one that broke the country. And I mean, he has to go. He has to go. So Mercedes Stevenson, who's a reporter over at Global, is saying that senior government sources say that the White House has warned Prime Minister's office, Justin Trudeau, that if Canada implements retaliatory tariffs, the US will hit Canada even harder. So, we saw this just last week with Colombia, right? Like Colombia apparently in the middle of the night decided that they weren't going to take a couple planes full of illegal criminals who have illegally been in the United States who are being deported. They were supposed to go back to Colombia. The Colombian president said, no, we're not going to take them. And Trump, apparently from a golf course, like texting in between holes, put out this order saying, we're going to slap you with 25% tariffs. We're revoking all the visas for you and all your family members, a bunch of other measures. And if this doesn't stop, we're going to double that tariff to 50%. Like Trump means business. This is like F around and find out, right? And I think Justin Trudeau continues to F around. He continues to kind of poke the bear and say, okay, like, do you dare me to? We'll do it, and you do it. And like playing this game of chicken as if we are two equals, like as if our tariffs are going to hurt them as much as their tariffs hurt us. I mean, maybe if we were equal size with equal populations and equal economies, that might make a little bit more sense, but it's just not the reality. Like Canada is so wholly dependent on the United States for our entire economy. Like we need them. And so playing these kind of games, especially when at this point, I get that he was elected. He was elected 3 times, but he's not a legitimate prime minister right now. He resigned. He has no business being propped up the way that Jagmeet Singh has been propping him up. I cannot believe that they allowed him to prorogue Parliament, like to just press pause on our democracy. This might be like the most consequential moment in this century for Canada. Like I can't even think of a time that would be more important for our politicians to be in Ottawa at work and to be debating and discussing a reaction, like to see our parliament in work, to have like Canadians have the ability to observe what's happening and to have some accountability from the opposition to the government. But we can't because Trudeau pulled the plug on Parliament. He prorogued. Like it's unbelievable to me that these guys aren't even going to work. Like they're not even parliamentarians aren't even carrying out their business in Parliament because Justin Trudeau wants to step aside so that Mark Carney can become the first World Economic Forum unelected prime minister. It doesn't give you confidence. It just feels like the system is absolutely broken. We need massive reforms. We need massive change. We have basically an unelected prime minister right now who's appointing to an unelected body, the Senate, 10 senators that are going to be filled at some point before Trudeau leaves. And it's all being held up by a governor general who has no accountability to the people. Like, what kind of system is this? No wonder our country is absolutely failing when this is the way that our institutions are set up. They're set up to stop the people from having a say at a time when Canadians have a lot to say. And it's just absolutely unbelievable, unbearable. I think, I don't know, I'm not one of those people who thinks that Canada should join the United States or become the 51st state, but I totally understand why many, many people would.
Yeah, you know, you said that this is going to do damage, and you're right. On a scale of 10 to 1, every ounce of pain we hope to extract against the American government, every ounce that Trudeau hopes to extract is going to hurt us 10 times more than it would ever hurt them. There's simple concessions we can make here, and they should have been made a month ago. He told Israel. He said, get this done, get the hostages back, get a ceasefire finished before I get into office, or else there will be hell to pay. And guess what? They reached a deal that nobody thought they could. He gave Justin Trudeau the same warning: fix the border, fix the crime, fix the drugs, and he ignored him. He knew that this would happen, and he wanted to be in front of that podium tonight. He wants to keep people waiting because he wants his moment to repair his legacy. Rewind just 4 months ago, before Trump won his election, Trudeau's polling was worse than it had ever been, and now he sees an opportunity to save his legacy, and he's doing that on the backs of Canadians. It's pathetic. We should never have let it happen. And the only way this changes, and I'm saying this to Jagmeet Singh now, the only way this changes is if he follows through with his word and brings the government down at the earliest possible moment. If he doesn't, it will be the biggest betrayal in Canadian history.
Well, we need to recall Parliament. We need to have parliamentarians at work. And Jagmeet Singh said that he was going to pull the plug as soon as that happens. So yeah, you know, it's just it's unbelievable that these people are the ones that hold the balance of power, Keean. And I mean, Tuesday is going to be a rough day for the loonie and the economy. But at this point, you know, we don't have Parliament. Justin Trudeau was asked during his Q&A if he would bring back Parliament, and he didn't really answer. So no surprise there. Wouldn't be surprised at all if Jagmeet Singh continues to prop up this government, because he's been doing it for the last 2 years inexplicably. And it's just a rough time for our country. Well, folks, really appreciate you joining us here on a Saturday evening, 10 p.m. Here in the Eastern time zone, and 8 o'clock for you out in Alberta, Keean. I appreciate you jumping on the live stream. We're going to be back on Monday morning with my show, The Candice Malcolm Show, and we will have more analysis and provide all of the latest news and details. So, folks, we're going to wrap it up, but appreciate you joining us this evening. Appreciate all your support. Check out the Keean Bexte's The Counter Signal. And Keean, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.